Ever wonder why the pharmaceutical world is so strict? I mean, why can one little signature hold up a life-saving drug? Or how a tiny slip-up in a lab can stop a new medicine dead in its tracks? Well, that's exactly what we're going to get into.
And the answer? It's not just red tape. Not at all. It's actually a really powerful system of rules that's there to protect, well, all of us. And today, we're going to decode that system, that whole alphabet soup of regulations we call GxP.
So, what even is GxP? Well, at its heart, it's a pretty simple idea. It stands for Good X Practice. That X is just a variable, a placeholder that changes based on where you are. So in a lab, that's good laboratory practice. Doing clinical trials, that's good clinical practice. And in the factory, you guessed it, good manufacturing practice. But no matter the letter, the goal is always the same, to make absolutely sure that every single medicine is safe, that it works, and that it's the same high quality every time.
You know, these rules, they didn't just pop up out of nowhere. They were actually born from some really tough history, from tragedy, really. They were created because of real-world disasters that showed everyone just how high the stakes are when things go terribly wrong.
The big one, the one that changed everything, was the thalidomide crisis back in the 1960s. There was this drug for morning sickness, right? But it hadn't been properly tested for pregnant women. The result was just a global catastrophe. Thousands of babies were born with severe deformities. It was a massive wake-up call, and it forced regulators all over the world to say, never again. That's when they started creating these strict, mandatory rules for trials and for manufacturing.
And that brings us to a really, really important point. Following GxP isn't optional. It's not like a set of nice-to-have guidelines. Nope. It is the law. If a company can't prove they're following these rules, they are legally forbidden from selling their medicine. End of story. It's basically their license to operate, and it's all about protecting public health.
Okay, so how does this whole thing actually work in the real world? Well, a good way to think about it is to see GxP as three main pillars. And these pillars follow the journey of a medicine all the way from just an idea in a lab to a finished product on a pharmacy shelf.
So that journey starts in the lab, which is covered by GLP. Then it moves into human trials in the clinic. That's GCP. And finally, it gets scaled up for mass production in the factory, which is where GMP comes in. Each of these stages has its own very specific playbook.
All right, let's start at the beginning with Good Laboratory Practice, or GLP. This is all about the super early, non-clinical research. So picture a scientist in a lab testing a new compound to see if it's toxic. GLP is the set of rules making sure that whole study is planned out right, that the team knows what they're doing, and that every single result is written down accurately. That way, when regulators look at the data, they can actually trust it before that drug gets anywhere near a person.
Okay, from the lab we move to the clinic. This is where Good Clinical Practice, or GCP, takes over. And GCP is all about one thing: protecting people. Its number one job is to keep the human volunteers in clinical trials safe and to protect their rights. A huge part of this is something called informed consent, making sure every single person in a trial knows exactly what the risks are. On top of that, GCP also guarantees that the data coming out of those trials is believable and correct.
And finally, we get to the factory. This is the world of good manufacturing practice, or GMP. Think of this as the backbone of actually making the medicine. I mean, when you're churning out millions of pills, GMP is what makes sure every single batch is exactly the same and hits all the quality marks. We're talking spotless facilities, equipment that's perfectly maintained, and processes that are proven to work, all to guarantee that every pill has the right stuff in it, at the right strength, and with no impurities.
So you have these three huge pillars, right? GLP, GCP, and GMP. But what holds them all together? There's one universal principle that connects everything, a rule so important it's the foundation for the entire system. And that's the power of good documentation.
There's a mantra you'll hear again and again in the pharma world. If it isn't documented, it didn't happen. Seriously. To an auditor, if you didn't write it down, it never happened. Period. Every single step, every result, every signature,
It all has to be on paper to prove you followed the rules.
And how do they do that? Well, there's a handy checklist for what good documentation looks like. It's called Alcoa Plus. So the data has to be attributable, you know who did it and when, legible, you can actually read it, contemporaneous, meaning you write it down as it happens, not try to remember it hours later, original, it's the first place it was written down, and accurate, it has to be correct. And the little plus on the end, that just means it also needs to be complete, consistent, enduring, and available for anyone who needs to check it.
Okay, so we have this really solid framework in place, but things can still go wrong. GxP failures aren't just something from the history books. They happen today, and believe me, the consequences are just as serious as they've ever been.
One of the most common issues you see today is a data integrity breach. So imagine an analyst who's under a ton of pressure. A test fails. Instead of documenting it, they just delete the result and run the test again and again until they get a pass. That's a huge violation of Alcoa Plus, right? It breaks the accurate and original rules. And the danger is, it could be hiding a massive problem, like a batch of medicine that's going to lose its power way before its expiration date. That puts patients directly at risk.
And here's another huge risk, especially in the factory: cross-contamination. This is what happens when a machine isn't cleaned perfectly between making different drugs. So you get a tiny bit of residue from one drug. Let's say it's a really potent hormone that gets mixed into the next batch of something totally different, like a simple painkiller. For someone with an allergy or a specific health condition, that mix-up could be incredibly dangerous.
Which brings us to a final and maybe the most important point: real GxP compliance. It's not just about ticking boxes on a checklist. It's so much more than that. It's about building a mindset across the entire company, a true culture of quality.
And what does that look like? Well, it means always investing in training, so everyone understands why the rules exist. It means doing your own internal audits to find problems before an inspector does. It means sticking to the procedures every single time and keeping the equipment in perfect shape. Because compliance isn't something you do once. It's a constant, ongoing process that's all about one thing: protecting patients.
So GMP is really the bedrock of modern medicine. It was born from the tragedies of the past to keep us safe today. But science is moving faster than ever, right? We've got AI, personalized medicine, all this incredible new tech. And it leaves us with a really important question to think about. Are the rules we have today going to be enough to prevent the crises of tomorrow?